Hey everyone, so I wanted to go through an article that I found on thewig.com. It's titled Mental Health Stresses of Climate Change Begin to Show. Um, it's Elliot Ferguson yesterday that posted on this website this article. So I'm going to try and jump through the article, give you the gist of it, and maybe give some commentary that sounds smart about this. So among the signs held by protesters at a climate strike in September was one that read, "I'm going to die from climate change." It was held by a serious-looking teenager listening to the speakers on the stage talk about the grim future that awaits them as the effects of climate change unfold. Nearby, other protesters held signs reading, "There is no planet B and climate inaction is a crime." So I'm not refuting that man's activity on Earth is not having somewhat of an effect on the planet Earth. However, I think that there's a lot of fear-based propaganda to always create a extreme crisis. If you look at that, it's been, when I was younger, it was acid rain. There's always these doomsday predictions, like we have 2 years and then it's unreversible. This is all fear-based, and when people become fear-based, they start asking the government to inflict change, right? I mean, it's normal. However, the government will usually respond by possibly taking away more rights, taxing foods such as animal products that are extremely important for our health. They concentrate and say things like the cow farts and stuff like that, and livestock agriculture is one of the major reasons of greenhouse emissions, which is completely false. Globally, around 4% of emissions are from livestock, 5%, and I'm going by the EPA standards. So overall, this is not what is overwhelming our current situation. Like, the world is not becoming overwhelmed because it can't handle cow farts, right? So they're concentrating on that, but meanwhile, look, it's common sense. We see all the vehicles outside, the airplanes, we see the boats, we see what has happened truly to our oceans. We look at the way our farming needs to have a huge reformation, a great change in farming, but it's smarter to just create farming systems that mimic more closely the ecological systems. And when you look at the ruminant animals and how they graze on pasture and grasslands, this replenishes the soil. The over tilling of the soil also has an effect on greenhouse gas emissions. However, the concentration, in my opinion, of going after livestock and animal agriculture, I think that it's just an agenda behind, the true agenda behind that is to get us to eat soy, wheat, and corn, the things that are subsidized, the things that they were previously feeding to the ruminant animals so that we could have beef. They're getting smart, and they're like, well, why don't we just convince everybody that the soy, wheat, and corn is super healthy, start making plant-based alternatives, and let's use food surveys to put doubt about the actual important nutritional group such as animal products, put doubt about the animal fat. They've done that for 50 years and convinced us. Meanwhile, people are going ketogenic diets, people are going carnivore diets, losing weight, reversing metabolic symptoms, which are the major cause of modern diseases. So it's not that I'm a complete climate denier. It's just that if we are having a negative effect on the earth, it's not going to be solved by taking away appropriate nutrition from humans, so that we're dependent on processed plant meats and milks, and the scary idea of clean meats where they're taking genes from animals and trying to grow slabs of protein. The nutrition within animals is because the animals were alive, they were outside, they were eating the appropriate nutrients that were available in the plants. And now we're just feeding them basically something that they're not supposed to be eating, and that makes them sick. So the idea of the animal agriculture being very archaic and torturous, and we have to evolve past that. No, the actual killing of the animal is not the issue. If you slit the throat of an animal, I know I have an injury from a very sharp piece of metal. You don't even feel it, and immediately you pass out. The issue, if we're going to go after the animal agriculture, is again, it's not the killing. It's the lifestyle. It's the quality of life that they have before they're killed. Because now they're being put into buildings, and basically they're not outside in nature, and that's what we have to reform. And this is what happens when big agricultural businesses put rural farmers out of work, and how the government wants to function with a global food system. So therefore they put standards and practices that keep those farmers basically in debt. All right. The speakers at the climate strike were followed by a New Orleans style jazz funeral procession, complete with a model of the planet Earth in an open casket. This is like, oh yeah, that's going to change. That is going to change. Going out with picket signs, going out with a globe in a casket. This is a joke. This is just keeping us busy while they're going to do the exact agenda that they planned, except now they're creating distress in our young children. They're making young children that should be obedient to their parents and whatnot, literally telling their parents that it's all your fault, etc. I guess this is for the children a sense of empowerment where they can change the world with picket signs, but we know that has never been the case. We know that the situation, they're talking about like, hey, let's build buildings that suck CO2 and put it back in the soil. Well, that's called trees. So don't make these friggin' industries, and then after you're going to tax my exhalation, my CO2. I see what's going on, The protest had a tone of impending doom, something that is matched by news about climate change, the vast majority of which is bad, and the steady stream of bad news is having an effect on people. They're basically saying like, stop eating, appropriate animal foods because it's bad. I'm a little fuzzy, guys, because I had back surgery and I'm on Lyrica, and I'm kind of like the vegans that have to like stop the videos because they lose their train of thought. So sorry if I kind of like, finish off with my point that's maybe not as good as I wanted to. People are having a really hard time because they are hearing all these terrible things happening in the world and they don't know how to fix them. It's a feeling of hopelessness. So, giving children a feeling of hopelessness. Look, these children are born into this new generation where everyone's on their cell phones, everyone's texting, everything is, within, the computer. They're not playing, how kids should play. They're worrying about things that they cannot change, where they should be concentrating on school. And yes, doing their part if possible, but this sense of doom is called the big lie. It's a propaganda technique that they create a crisis, and that pushes forward an agenda, because out of fear, they're like, do something. They're like, okay, well, these are the stats, and we have to do this, and we have to act fast, because, it's a crisis. So we're not going to vote on anything. We know best, and literally they're screwing us, and the population's like, asking for this. Canadian mental health associations describe climate anxiety or co-anxiety as a deep fear of environmental doom and human catastrophe. And while not everyone is susceptible, it's a growing issue, something that agencies need more attention. So notice that not everyone's susceptible. If you are not healthy because you are not eating a human appropriate diet. You're not nourishing yourself. You're not giving the micronutrients that are required. You will have less of an ability to deal with stresses. When your body is healthy, when your hormones are working properly, then you're able to deal with life stresses and to look at them in a proper perspective and maybe do research and not, have faith in scientism where, everything now is science, science, science. They call nutritional science when it's food questionnaires, and we're not doing controlled and methods and stuff like that. We're doing a lot of policy changes with epidemiological studies, which can create whatever kind of results that they want. The climate emergency is not just a question of wildfires or raising temperatures and rising oceans. Again, I'm not completely a climate denier, but after finding out that the Amazon was burning this year and they used it again as a fear-based thing, like, oh my God, the whole rainforest is burning down, when in reality there's wildfires in the rainforests every year, and in previous years they were worse. Except this year, I heard a lot about the Amazon burning, and somehow they were able to tie that in with animal agriculture, which is, quite deceptive. In 2018, the Canadian Association of Physicians for Environmental pointed out a gap in research about the links between climate change and mental health. Again, links are not randomized controlled studies. Our kids are eating crap food, okay? They're eating a high carb processed diet. They're living on Red Bull and whatnot. So they're not healthy. I believe that the previous generation was convinced in low-fat diets and whatnot. And I think that when a child is being born, that if the mother has any nutritional deficiencies or her diet is not a nourishing diet, especially, and I call a nourishing diet a diet that is high in animal fats, where all those fat-soluble vitamins are, and the fat allows these fat-soluble vitamins to be absorbed. So I think that this generation is not optimized, and it's true. It's because of the health of the previous generation. So I think that the high amount of polyunsaturated fats that in previous videos, toxic seed oils that are high in omega-6 that screw up our omega-6 to 3 ratio, creating an inflammatory process, a chronic inflammatory process, and a highly oxidized environment in our blood. The fats that they're creating, since they don't have the proper fats to make the baby, I think that that's one cause. I'm not saying the only cause of the increased rates in ADHD, autism, as well as mental illness and other illnesses that go beyond that. Our ancestors were very, very serious about the nutrition, during tribal time, the nutrition of the mothers. There were ways of feeding mothers before the tribe allowed her to be impregnated. So many people will experience adverse mental health outcomes and social impacts from the threat of climate change, the perceived direct experience of climate change, and changes to one's local environment. The report stated media and popular culture representations of climate change influence stress responses and mental health and well-being. We know that there's studies even about Facebook, how it increases anxiety. Let's say you type something and then there's no thumbs up or people don't reply, then you start doubting yourself. Either I'm not popular, no one cares what I'm writing, or maybe people think what I wrote is stupid. It's this anxiety waiting for this feedback that often doesn't occur. So we know that the technological age increases anxiety, decreases sense of well-being, because we're always inside these electronical devices. And I'm guilty of that too. I have a teenage son who just really feels pissed off that he can't just be thinking of all the dreams of his possible future. You know what I mean? Seriously? Like, they're so preoccupied with this that, like, this is gonna like, what's the point? What's the point of school? What's the point of me getting a career? The earth is gonna end, This can lead to a sense of hopelessness. Well, what happens when there's hopelessness? Then you increase the use of drugs, the use of escaping that sense of hopelessness. So creating hopelessness and despair, grief, fear, anger, which the article says is most acutely felt in the young people. It is very, very unfortunate, and it's going to lead to obviously huge problems down the way. I think that the problems created by the fear-based approach and the manipulation will really have a negative impact on these children. They have a growing, developing brain. These teenagers are not finished developing. They should be concentrating on other things besides this. I'm not saying that it's not appropriate, or that kids can speak up. It's just that there's a big lie behind it, and there's a reason why they want to create a crisis. This is a propaganda technique that was used by Hitler. Okay. He now has to factor in how the world is going to change in his life. Okay, yeah, everyone has to factor that and what that means to him. And somehow he is supposed to be doing something about it. And like I said, yeah, I understand. I understand that, I'm not saying you kids, get out of here and blah, blah, blah. But there's that Lyrica fog. Completely lost my train of thought. Can't wait to get off of this. I'm on it just because of the spine surgery. I'm going to wean off of that with the doctor. It's garbage, but it helps with the pain. He now has to factor in how the world is going to change in his life and what that means. And somehow he is, yeah, of course. Okay, I'm not saying that our youth are not supposed to, be part or even protest. It's just that I know that they're protesting with misinformation. That they're basically being used. They're being, given a platform, just like Greta. She's being manipulated. She's being, why is she given such a platform? There's a reason, and that's sick that they're taking advantage of a young girl that is hopeless, that is in despair, that has autism. That's such a low blow. There's a big difference between how young and adults process their emotions, and young people are particularly vulnerable to the negative mental health effects of climate change because they have not yet learned the habits that allow them to put aside the stream of bad news and go about their daily routine, Knight said. And youth have fewer filters between their emotions and what they express in public. Yeah, exactly. They're still developing. We should be, giving them the proper tools to know what they can change and know what they can't change. And they should be, learning tools how to cope with life, not going to protest and feeling that that's the only thing that they know how to do because they're too young to know how to process things and emotions to be able to be in the world and be, cognitively, to know about what's going on, but to not have this stall their lives or to affect their future hopes. This is a crisis that is a propaganda technique. Grown-ups are very, very good at not feeling things that they grown-ups are very, very good at not feeling things that they really need to feel, she said. We are really good at disconnecting from the things that we need to feel. The disconnect can translate into loneliness and isolation as people are unable to reconcile their own fears about climate change and the lack of action they are seeing by people and government all around them, what they actually feel. is so far removed from the response. Even Tolleson had to step back a little from her activism for the sake of her emotional health. I had to take a month off, feeling we were all burnt out. After September 20th strike, we were all saying, wow, that was a lot of work. Yeah, and it's not going to lead to anything. You won't, instead of saying, you know what, I'm going to go after, I'm going to go into my community, I'm going to encourage rural farmers, stuff like that. No, I'm going to put a pickup sign because I feel hopeless, because I'm being manipulated by media. And putting anxiety into action is a key, not only to getting the message out, but also keeping morale up. People don't want to have a future because people don't want to have a future because there is not going to be a future. You see what's happening? Imagine our youth having that perspective. What's the point? I'm just going to stay on my text. I'm just going to, immerse myself in alternate, virtual reality, because there's no point. Why should I worry about the future when it's going to end? Awful way of putting our youth into that state. That is their mindset. If you are just going to die, why are you going to do all this, right? Wow. Talk about manipulating our youth. That is why we are urging people to act and come to strikes and get involved in local organizations, because that relieves the feeling of hopelessness because you are doing something. Oh, okay, so let's do this just because it's going to relieve the feeling of hopelessness. It's not really going to change anything, but it's going to make you feel better. Why don't you waste all your time picketing instead of being with your family, instead of enjoying your brothers and sisters, going out and doing sports? Just feel hopeless, just hold the stupid signs, it'll shut you up, and we'll still do exactly what we're going to do. Action is the best antidote for anxiety. Yeah, of course you have anxiety, you have to take action, but I don't think this is from just picketing signs. With these, slogans, especially for young people, it definitely is stressful and an anxiety-induced reality. So, we went from, a creator that created this. We have a purpose to, nothing became everything. We came from goo to you from the zoo. Our future is unwritten. We live in an infinite black void on this little blue marble, and in a way they keep on saying, look at how small we are and look at how vast this is. We're kind of insignificant and we should be humbled. And I think that is an awful perspective. I think that we're moving away. That's just my personal belief. I just noticed that we were a lot more religious. And now we're moving away, we're redefining everything, redefining marriage, redefining gender, redefining what it is to be human, elevating animals to a human level, thereby descending humans to an animal level, saying that we are exactly the same, looking within nature that everything kills other things to survive, okay? The soil is omnivorous, right? The soil is dead animals and organic matter. So the plants are not, are eating animal-based nutrition, and the animals are eating within that plant. You understand? It's I don't remember why I said that. Thank you, Lyrica. Action is the best antidote, especially for young people. It definitely is stressful. We did that. Despite the immensity of the task, Sanderson's experience at the climate conference left him confident. It's tough when you hear all these bad reports and not necessarily positive news, And again, yes, okay, I understand. It is an issue. I just think that the true issue of how the climate is responding to our activities has nothing to do with the nutritional aspect. Has to do with economic sectors, industrial sectors, transportation sectors. yes, food sectors, because a lot of the food has to be transported all around the world. So I think I'm going to stop it there. That's pretty much the end of the article. What I'm basically saying, not being a climate denier, but thinking that it's being blown out of proportion. And I think that there's an agenda behind it. Anytime the government creates fear-based, it's because they're trying to take away something from you. They're trying to create an emergency so that they can take action quickly before we even realize what's happening. You know, Canada is the producer of canola oil, huge producer, you know, all over, like, you know, in China, the canola comes from Canada. When, you know, we're starting to see that polyunsaturated omega-6 fatty, you know, seed oil are very damaging to our health, a major cause of all modern diseases. Do you think that, you know, they're ever going to stop, you know, putting this in our food? Do you think Canada wants to do that? No, okay? It's all about the economy. We are food for the system. The system is not working for us. We are working for it, to the benefit of a small group. All right, guys, thanks.